episode with Ralph. Hope you're fine, dear lovely IELTS candidates. Well, today we're going to cover Task 1, Academic Writing, and we'll have a... Hello, everyone, and Academic Writing, and we'll have a report on a bar chart, which describes the percentage of men and women. First of all, let's take a look at our bar chart. Let's see what it's about, and then we'll talk about the details later. The chart shows the percentage of people in the UK who ate at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables per day between 2001 and 2008. Summarize information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, upon our first look, we must consider what kind of graph it is. It is comparative graph or trend graph. Well, you know, when we have dates plotted over, let's say, a horizontal line in our chart or graph, then it's a trend graph. It shows the period of time, for example, from the starting point up to the ending point. And we all know that when we have, let's say, a trend graph, our language, the words that we use, will definitely differ from those of comparative graphs, right? So here is a bar chart, sample bar chart, which is a trend graph, and we have the dates from 2001 up to 2008, and there are 3 main categories here: men, women, and children. And it's about eating 5 portions of fruit and vegetables per day, and the vertical line shows the percentage: 10%, 20%, 30%, and 40%. All right. So we know what our chart is about. In our planning, first of all, we know what the introduction is about. We always paraphrase the question, changing the language, changing the word, and using some synonym language. In this case, we can have a very good introduction. Now, the most important part is our overview section. Well, first of all, let's take a look at chart here, and let's see what key features you can find out in this graph. Well, of course, I'm pretty sure that when you're looking at this graph, you know that the blue chart is always, throughout the whole period, is more than the other 2 charts, right? So women ate more than men and children throughout the period. And of course, the same thing can be applied to men who ate more than children throughout the period. And children ate the least throughout the period, right? And upon analyzing this chart, again, you can see that by the end of the period, this is again about the overview section, as you can see, the popularity of eating fruit and vegetables increased by the end of the period, right? So when you first take a look at 2001, you can see that they eat less than, for example, 2006, 7, and 8. So this is another key feature of this graph, that by the end of the period, the popularity of eating fruit and vegetables increased among men, women, and children. All right, now in writing our details, first of all, you know, grouping data and categorizing data, as I've said all the time, is one of the most significant steps in writing your report. And here, there are 3 main groups of men, women, and children. You know, the best way sometimes, as I said before, in our, I guess, previous bar chart that we worked, sometimes you can have 3 main body paragraphs, 3 detailed paragraphs. You can have the same here. For example, you can talk about women in the 3rd paragraph, then talk about men in the 4th paragraph, and in the 5th paragraph, you can talk about children. In this case, you will, for example, you can talk about women in the 3rd paragraph, then talk about men in the 4th paragraph, and in the 5th paragraph, you can talk about children. In this case, you will have a well-structured, right, a report, and you'll definitely not lose any marks when you have 3 detailed paragraphs for sure. All right, so when you see that analyzing and grouping data is a little bit challenging, you can have 3 detailed paragraphs. All right. And for detailed paragraphs, I should say something important. You are not going to write everything you see here. As I've said before, the beginning and end, right? The starting point and the ending point of the chart is the most crucial, important data that you have to cover. So the beginning point is very important. So for all 3 groups here, you should write about the beginning point and the ending point, all right? Now, as you can see, for example, in writing our paragraph 3, which is about women, you can see that it increased up to 2006 and then decreased in 2008, right? So this is one important thing that you can cover in paragraph 3. For men, as you can see, the first 3 years from 2001 to 2003, the data, the percentage remained the same, and it increased slightly, right, up to 2008. And for children, you can have the same. You can say that, for example, children was relatively low in 2001, and it remained the same, as you can see, until 2003. And after 2003, there was an increase, right? There was increase up to 2007, and there was a decline in 2008, right? So these are important details that you can cover in writing your bar chart. Right, now let's start with our introduction part. Always decline in 2008, right? So these are important details that you can cover in writing your bar chart. Right, now let's start with our introduction part. Always, when you want to write your introduction, try to read the question again. The chart shows the percentage of people in the UK who ate at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables per day between 2001 and 2008. Now, what I'm going to do here is that instead of chart, I'm going to write bar chart, all right? Instead of shows, I'm going to write provides information, right? Instead of people, I can write the groups, the name of the groups, men, women, and children. Instead of at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables, instead of portions, I can write servings, 5 servings. And instead of fruit and vegetables, I can write agricultural produce, right? And between 2001 and 2008, I can write from 2001 to 2008. Now, this is going to be our introduction paragraph. The bar chart provides information on the percentage of men, women, and children, right, that ate at least 5 servings of agricultural produce per day from 2001 to 2008. I repeat it again. The bar chart provides information on the percentage of men, women, and children that ate at least 5 servings of agricultural produce per day from 2001 to 2008. That is our introduction paragraph. Now, our overview paragraph is 5 servings of agricultural produce per day from 2001 to 2008. That is our introduction paragraph. Now, our overview paragraph will start with the entire period that women ate the most, right? But children the least. And by the end of the period, the popularity increased among these 3 groups, right? Now, we always start our overview paragraph with the word overall, comma. It can be seen that, this is the phrase that we always, or most of the times use when writing our overview paragraph. It can be seen that across the entire period, across the entire period. Women were the most likely group to have the necessary amount of fruit and vegetables in their diet, and children the least. So this is our key features. Now, by the end of the period, the popularity of fruit and vegetables increased among all the participants in the survey. So here, I've not provided any specific details. You must not include any specific details of your chart or graph in overview paragraph. You just provide key features, right? General, let's say, informational features of the chart. Now, our third paragraph will be, or must not include any specific details of your chart or graph in overview paragraph. You just provide key features, right? General, let's say, informational features of the chart. Now, our third paragraph will be, or our first body paragraph will be about women. Now, as you can see, women in 2001 was around 21%, right? And it reached a high of 35%, as you can see, in 2008, and then declined or decreased to around 30%, right, by 2008. So this is the information that I have to write in my first body paragraph. A closer look, that's a very good phrase, a closer look at the chart reveals, instead of reveals, you can write shows, illustrates, demonstrates. A closer look at the chart reveals that women had the highest percentage overall, starting, so this is a very good relative clause here, starting at 21% in 2001 and reaching a high of 35% in 2006, after a steady rise in the previous years. This is very important. You have to cover those years before 2006 in a very simple sentence, right, without providing any data. Right? So when you say a steady rise in the previous years, the reader will know that before 2006 and after 2001, there was a slight or steady rise in the percentage of women, right? And our last word here, by 2008, the figure had declined slightly to 30%. This is a very good paragraph. Why? Because I wrote about the starting point, and then I wrote about what happened during the period from the starting up to the ending point, and then I provided the data for 2008, which is the ending point, right? Now I'm going to write about men in my second body. And then I provided the data for 2008, which is the ending point, right? Now I'm going to write about men in my second body paragraph. So as you can see, we can start the first sentence by saying that it was lower than women throughout the period, right? It started at around, 17% in 2001. It remained the same up to 2003 and increased by 2006 and then declined slightly to 26% by 2008, right? Now, the ratio of men who had 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day was lower than that of women throughout the period. So this is our first sentence. I say that throughout the whole period, men were lower than women. Now, I should write about let's say the percentage of men in the beginning of the period. It remained steady. It remained steady at 17% for the first 3 years, right? For the first 3 years, from 2001 to 2003, but then rose to 27% by 2006, right? So when I say it rose to 27%, it means that from 2003 up to 2006, there was increase without any decline, right? And declined slightly to 26% by 2008. Again, here I wrote about the percentage of men in the ending date in 2008, right? This is very important. And now it's time to write about children. Now, the percentage of men in the ending date in 2008, right? This is very important. And now it's time to write about children. Now, in the first sentence, we should say that children's figures were below those of men and women, right? And the starting point was around 12%, right? As you can see. And it remained the same until 2003, all right? And then you can see there was a noticeable increase from 2003 to 2007, all right? And in 2008, it fell down slightly to around 24%. So this is important. These are important details that I have to cover in my third body paragraph. Now, children, whose figures were below those of men and women, started relatively low at 12% in 2001. Right, this is the percentage in the starting point. The figure remained the same. It remained the same until 2003, and thereafter there was a noticeable increase to 17% in 2004. Right, so as you can see, in 2004 that was 17%. Right, now from then on, the figures continued to rise until they reached a high of 26%. So to reach a high of is, let's say, the highest point. Right, so in this case, here you provide the highest point of percentage for children. So it reached a high of 26% in 2007 before falling back slightly to 24% in 2008. Right. So this is a very good, well-structured report. You know, the introduction paragraph is really good. It's well-structured. You have used synonym language here. The overview paragraph highlights the main trends without going into detail, right? And the body paragraphs group the data, and it compares and contrasts when it's appropriate, all right? And all the information, all the necessary information and key features are included in this report. So it can get around 8 or 8.5 band score for this sample writing. All right, that's all, guys, for today. Hope you've enjoyed this part. If you have any questions, you can simply ask in comments, and I will kindly answer all your questions. By 2000, women in 2001, starting at 21% in 2001 and reaching a high of 35% in 2006 after a steady rise in the previous years. This is very important. You have to cover those years before 2006 in a very simple sentence, right, without providing any data. Right? By 2008, it happened during the period from the second body paragraph. So as you 26%, lower than children's figures were below. This is 2000 to rise until they a percentage for children. So it reached a high of 26% in 2007 before falling back slightly to 24% in